There is a version of you that cares too much, that absorbs every slight, carries every burden, feels every room you walk into as though it were weather. And there is another version, the one you're afraid of becoming, the version that feels nothing, that has shut the door so firmly that nothing gets in, not pain, but not love either. You've been oscillating between these two versions your entire life, too open or too closed, too soft or too hard. But what if those aren't the only options? The Stoics practice something that the modern world has almost entirely forgotten, a form of detachment that does not require you to stop feeling, only to stop being enslaved by feeling. You've been hurt, perhaps more than once, perhaps in ways that left marks no one can see. And at some point, you made a decision, consciously or not, to protect yourself, to pull back, to stop giving so much of yourself to people who only seem to take. But something went wrong. The walls you built to keep pain out started keeping everything out. Conversations became transactional. Relationships became shallow. You stopped being vulnerable, but you also stopped being moved by art, by music, by the people who actually deserved your trust. You became safe and hollow. Or perhaps you went the other direction. You tried staying open, radically, stubbornly open, and you paid for it every time. Every betrayal cut deeper because you had no protection. Every disappointment landed harder because you had no cushion. You kept reaching out and getting burned, and people told you to stop caring so much, as though caring were a flaw you could simply correct. Neither extreme works. Emotional flooding and emotional shutdown are two sides of the same coin. Both are responses to a world that feels too intense. Both are attempts at self-preservation that ultimately fail. Epictetus understood this paradox intimately. He was a man who had lost everything, his freedom, his physical autonomy, and yet he taught love, community, and human connection until his final days. He did not achieve this by caring less. He achieved it by caring differently. There is a way to hold the world without being crushed by it. The Stoics called it apatheia, not apathy, as the word has been corrupted to mean, but freedom from destructive passion. The ability to feel without being controlled by feeling. This is not coldness, it is mastery. The Stoic concept of detachment has been catastrophically misunderstood. Modern culture reads the Stoics as emotionless, stone-faced, indifferent. This is not merely inaccurate, it is the opposite of what they taught. Marcus Aurelius loved his children. He grieved when they died, and several did. His journals are threaded with tenderness, with affection for his wife, his teachers, his friends. Seneca wept openly when he lost his closest companions. Epictetus spoke of the bond between parent and child with a warmth that defies the stereotype of the cold philosopher. These were not men who felt nothing. These were men who had learned to feel without losing themselves. The key distinction is between what the Stoics called the initial, involuntary emotional response and the full-blown passions that take over your rational mind. Chrysippus, the third head of the Stoic school and perhaps its most brilliant systematic thinker, mapped this distinction with extraordinary precision. He argued that emotions begin as judgments, and that by changing the judgment, you change the emotion. The first response, he said, is natural and unavoidable. The second is a choice and often a destructive one. When your child falls, the flash of fear is natural, but the spiral into catastrophic thinking, the hours of anxiety, the suffocating protectiveness, the inability to function, that is the passion taking the reins. When someone betrays you, the sting of hurt is natural. But the years of resentment, the obsessive replay of the event, the generalized distrust of all people, that is the wound becoming a prison. Detachment, in the Stoic sense, does not mean removing yourself from the first response. It means not allowing the first response to become the second. It means feeling the flash and then choosing what comes next, rather than being dragged behind your emotions like a man tied to a runaway horse, which incidentally is the exact metaphor Epictetus used. Buddhist philosophy arrives at a similar insight through different language. Non-attachment, the understanding that suffering comes not from experience itself, but from clinging to experience. You can love someone without clinging to them. You can want something without needing it. You can care about an outcome without making your peace contingent upon it. This is the art, and like all art, it requires practice, not perfection. Epictetus offered an image that, once understood, changes how you move through the world. He said, when you embrace your child, remind yourself that you are embracing a mortal, not to diminish the embrace, but to free it from the grip of fear. This sounds harsh until you understand what he's actually saying. He is not telling you to love less. He is telling you to love without the desperate clutch of someone who is terrified of loss. Because that clutch, that frantic holding, is not love. It is fear wearing love's clothing, and it poisons everything it touches. It turns affection into control. It turns relationships into hostage situations. It turns joy into anxiety, because every beautiful moment is shadowed by the terror that it might end. Hold loosely, not because you don't care, but because the tighter you grip, the more you distort the very thing you're trying to protect. This applies to people, to outcomes, to your image of how life is supposed to go. When you hold loosely, you can actually feel what you're holding. When you grip with white knuckles, all you feel is the ache in your own hands. The practical discipline of Stoic detachment is remarkably simple, though not easy. It works like this. When an emotion arrives, you acknowledge it, fully, without resistance. You do not push it down. You do not argue with it. You do not tell yourself you shouldn't feel what you feel. You sit with it. You name it. I am angry. I am hurt. I am afraid. And then, only then, you ask, what does this emotion want me to do? And is that what I should do? Because emotions are not commands. They are information. They tell you something about your situation, about your values, about what matters to you. But they do not obligate you to act. Anger tells you a boundary has been crossed. It does not obligate you to shout. Sadness tells you something has been lost. It does not obligate you to collapse. Fear tells you something is at stake. It does not obligate you to flee. The space between feeling and action is where your freedom lives. And detachment is simply the practice of widening that space, enough to make a choice rather than a reflex. This is what Marcus Aurelius did every day. He felt fear and chose duty. He felt frustration and chose patience. He felt grief and chose to keep governing, not by suppressing his emotions, by deciding each time what they would mean. Not everything deserves your emotional energy. This is a truth that the chronically overwhelmed must learn. You do not owe the world your nervous system. You do not owe strangers on the internet your peace of mind. You do not owe every crisis your full emotional participation. Seneca was ruthless about this. He curated his life, his friends, his obligations, his sources of information, with the precision of someone who understood that attention is the most valuable currency a human being possesses. He chose whom to care about. He chose which problems to engage with, not from indifference, but from discipline, because he knew that caring about everything is functionally identical to caring about nothing. It leads to the same exhaustion, the same paralysis, the same emptiness. Detachment in practice means making conscious decisions about where you invest emotionally. It means asking, does this situation deserve access to my inner world? Not every person earns your vulnerability. Not every news cycle warrants your anguish. Not every conflict requires your involvement. This is not coldness. This is curation. Here's the paradox that the Stoics lived but rarely stated explicitly. Detachment makes you more capable of love, not less. When you are no longer drowning in every emotion, you can actually be present for the people who matter. When you are not consumed by anxiety about outcomes, you can enjoy the moment as it is. When you are not clinging to relationships out of fear, you can appreciate them out of genuine affection. The most emotionally available people you know are not the ones who feel everything indiscriminately. They are the ones who have learned to regulate, to be present without being overwhelmed, to care without being consumed. Think of the parent who remains calm during a child's meltdown, the friend who listens without absorbing, the partner who can hold space for your pain without drowning in it. These people are not cold, they are anchored, and their steadiness is what makes them safe to be around. So let me give you 3 practices. First, the naming practice. When an emotion arrives, pause and name it silently. I am feeling anger. I am feeling fear. This simple act creates distance between you and the emotion. You are the one observing the feeling, not the feeling itself. Research in effective neuroscience confirms that naming emotions reduces their intensity. Second, the investment audit. At the end of each week, ask yourself, where did I spend emotional energy that I didn't need to? Identify 1 or 2 areas where you can withdraw your investment, not because you don't care, but because that care is not serving you or anyone else. Third, the loose grip. Choose one relationship or situation where you tend to clutch, and practice holding it more lightly, not abandoning it, not pulling away, simply relaxing the grip. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed the color of its thoughts. If your inner world is permanently flooded with unchecked emotion, you will become indistinguishable from the chaos around you. If it is entirely shut down, you will become indistinguishable from stone. The goal is neither. The goal is a mind that feels deeply and chooses wisely, a heart that is open but not defenseless, a life that engages with the world without being consumed by it. You do not have to choose between being hurt and being numb. There is a middle ground. The Stoics live there, and so can you. If this video shifted something for you, subscribe. That's the only ask. Until next time, be sovereign.